Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. Now I'm hearing an echo, so I'm going to what? Do you hear an echo, Maggie?
I do.
Okay. Oops.
Okay, mute your YouTube.
Okay, now I think I fixed it. Hello, YouTube land. That was a very, very dramatic start. I'm Cheryl Strayed, and I'm so glad you joined us. I have a wonderful book club through Literati called Wild Reads, and I pick a book every month. And this month, this beautiful book, Between the Mountain and the Sky, by my dear friend Maggie Doyne. It's a beautiful memoir that was published a couple months ago, Maggie. Yeah, when was it published? April,
Yeah,
March?
April. Yeah.
April. And the minute I read it, I was so excited to pick the book because it's so beautifully written. It's so moving. And it tells such an inspiring and deep story about the power we all have to make good in the world. Maggie, thank you so much for joining us to talk about your book today.
Oh, are you kidding? Thanks for having me and choosing it. And seeing it with the sticker on it just made my heart skip a beat.
Did they send you a copy?
That's the first time I've seen it. And it just
Okay, look at that, Maggie. We'll send you a copy. You get a sticker that says Cheryl Strayed Wild Reads. Okay.
Is that not the craziest thing ever? Thank you.
You're so welcome. Well, I know I have lots of writer friends, as you know, and I tend to in my club, and I want to say this to those of you who are part of my club too. I do tend to really actively avoid picking books by writers who are friends of mine, simply because I have so many writer friends. I don't want it to be the club of like, who are Cheryl's friends. But you are, as you know, a dear friend of mine. And I didn't pick it because you're a dear friend of mine. I chose this book because I was so moved by the story. So some of the people who are joining us today have read your book, but I also thought we should include the people who haven't read it. So Maggie, my first question for you, just for those people who are just tuning in and hearing about this book for the first time, please tell us what's your tell us introduce us to your book and tell us how it is that you came to write it.
So when I was 19 years old, instead of going to college at the very last minute, I ended up packing up a backpack and deciding to travel. I wanted to find a sense of self, a sense of purpose. I didn't set out to do anything like crazy. I just wanted to go surfing, and I got my belly button pierced, and it was just like
You did the
out
things 18-year-olds do.
Yeah, it wasn't that was me. And I'm from the suburbs of New Jersey. I had a ponytail and I played soccer, mom and a dad and a dog, the whole thing. And then on that journey, I somehow ended up many countries and thousands of miles in northeastern India. And I met a dear Nepali friend who had left her home as a child and as a refugee and a victim of civil war. And the two of us decided to go on a journey to Nepal and find traces of her identity and who she was and where she came from and kind of what had happened. So I end up in the foothills of the Himalayas in Nepal, watching my friend go on this journey. And I just found a huge piece of my heart. I fell in love with the country and the people, but it was also ravaged by civil war and loss and an orphan crisis. And I was, the story and you've heard it 1,000 times, but I was walking across the dry riverbed one day and I looked up and saw just dozens and dozens of children breaking rocks. They were like 3 years old and 5 years old. And they were breaking rocks to survive, to sell at the end of the day as gravel for $1 for food and survival. And it just was a moment where my whole world came standing still. I was shell-shocked and I didn't know what my place was. I didn't know what help could look like. But luckily, with the local people and the local community, we dug in. We started putting kids into school. and going on the journey of uplifting and rebuilding a community, and taking care of children together.
Right.
So,
And
yeah.
since that time, you now have built
Mm.
a children's home, that gives a home to people to, as you say, like how many kids now? 50?
Yeah, so we're 50, gosh, we're stopping counting. We just got 6 kids in the last couple months.
Oh, right. So now you're into the 60s.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
we have safe homes. We have a safe home for at-risk girls. We have a full service community school. We have health and wellness programs. We uplift women who have been victims of violence and domestic abuse. We do a lot of preventative services in the community. We step in so many ways. We have a farm, and we are just a cornerstone of community with the community, creating a safe place for children. Yeah.
Right. And, I think that one of the things that is so moving about this story, I mean, it is a big story about like the nonprofit you came to found going.
Yeah.
And if
Yeah.
those of you who are listening and want to learn a lot more about this work that Maggie and her co-founder Tope have done, along with many, many others, mostly Nepali people, go to blinknow.org. Is that right, Maggie? It's
Yeah.
.org. Yes. But one thing that I think is so moving and interesting to so many people who have read this book, and I know I've heard this a lot online in my Literati book club, is that this feeling that I think that you had when you saw those kids in the riverbed, that is, whether we see that here, right here, at home too, in the United States, where you walk past somebody who needs help and yourself to be somebody with privilege and safety and maybe some little amount of power, but then how do you use it to help another person? And I think that that's a really, really deep question. And so I want you to talk about that a bit, but I think something that you said is like, you didn't know your place. Here you were, a young white woman, from the privileged nation of the United States, who didn't know a whole lot about a whole lot of things. And yet you felt that need to act. And so talk to us a bit about that decision to act, and then the journey you've been on since then, learning about how best to help people from a position of privilege and power.
Yeah. I think, we're talking about the nonprofit world, the development sector. It's a very complex field with complicated questions, and yet it's a memoir. And so one of the hardest things about writing it was figuring out how to keep it a memoir and a story, and bring Tope's character to life and the children's characters to life, but also tackle on these underlying questions. And they were questions that that I'd grappled with, that I started that journey on. Like, what does help look like? How do you leverage your power and your privilege when you're born educated and free and empowered and safe, and you see an injustice and you come across that riverbed, whatever that moment is for you? Well, then what?
Mhm.
And it is a winding journey, that I go on. I started really young and very unknowing, but started out with a lot of questions. And I think those questions really helped me become a listener. And those questions and that youthfulness in me, it made me passionate, made me fiery. It made me want to change something that was, I could feel and know was so wrong. But I also knew I had to have help, and it was going to be for and by the community, and from the people. And Tope, as you've met him dozens of times. He was an orphan himself from that community, and had lost his mom when he was 7, his dad when he was 1, lost a sibling, and had gone to India as a child porter at the age of 9. And it kind of like, he has this crazy success story where he rose himself up through the ranks as a migrant and a refugee. And at the height of his career and the pinnacle of success, he wanted to come back. And so I felt like the opportunity to write the book was talking about how it does have to come from the people, and, bringing Tope's character in, bringing Sunita in, bringing the people in, and the aunties and uncles. but also just my personal journey and my personal story and my own grappling with all of these issues. And it was a hard book to write because we are in this time of gray. And like
Mhm.
I say in the book, colonialism with a good heart is still colonialism. And
Mhm.
writing about all of that was really hard. And yet I felt like I had to just pass on the baton to other people in their communities who want to do this work. So
Yeah, I mean, I think that so, yes, you're 35 now, right?
yeah, I'm just
So
getting
this
older.
Oh, you're getting older. You're finally growing up. I was saying before we went on, you're finally catching up to me, which I'm glad to hear. But you were still a teenager when you first stepped into this work. When you thought, okay, those children, I'm going to try to help one of them, and you did. You brought Hema, talked to her mother, and enrolled her in school. But I think one of the things you did that is so important, even though you had so much to learn, as you said, you did reach out to Tope. He's somebody that you'd worked with, that was
Mhm.
sort of a mentor to you, and that you knew was from that community, and you partnered with him, and the two of you began what became this beautiful, powerful, amazing thing.
Yeah,
You know?
wildly successful, transformative. It works. I mean, you've been there and it's about love, it's about caring for children and family, it's about creating peace, it's about education and literacy. I mean, this is a book club, the world's greatest equalizing force, the world's greatest chance at reaching a place of peace is creating opportunity and literacy and education for everyone, and
Yeah,
making sure that everyone has a chance. And that's, I think, a huge theme. That's something that we've known, and I think that we need to fight and continue to work for in our lifetime.
yeah.
Um, yeah, yeah.
And one of the things that I think is so powerful about the work you do, and you wrote about this a bit too in the beautiful book, is the power of books and education. And of course you provide, the first thing is to provide a safe and loving home for children who are orphans, but you also have, built a school that educates hundreds of kids in the community, that has already educated hundreds of kids. Many have graduated and gone on to college and into the world, making a life that wouldn't have been the same had they not been given the opportunity to attend school. And so I want to hear a bit about that. Now that you've been in this work for more than a decade, tell us some stories about some of the kids who are not kids anymore, who have gone into the world. What does it feel like to bear witness to the ways that they can contribute back to their communities?
Yeah. I mean, raising kids is really hard. That's what we do. And so you start with this little child, baby who they've lost a lot. They've suffered unthinkable tragedies and trauma. The students we serve, they start out, as beggars or rock breakers or having lost their entire families. And then through a process of healing and creating community and love and yeah, therapy and all of the things and dance and music and knowing that the next meal is going to come, they grow.
Hmm.
And all of a sudden they're, winning the soccer championship or the chess tournament or reading their poetry that they just wrote on stage. And all of a sudden they're graduating top of their class or the bottom of their class. Maybe success looks like not getting married when you're 15 or
Right.
having agency over your body. It looks differently for everybody, but our kids are all over the world. They are becoming teachers and engineers and doctors. Actually, we're hiring them back to come and work for us now and work with us.
Oh, that's
And Hema started college. She wants to start her own restaurant. It's
So
gonna.
Hema is that first girl that you enrolled in school. So and I
Mhm.
know her. She's a wonderful, wonderful young woman. Is she in Kathmandu in college?
Mhm,
Oh, that's so
mhm. She
wonderful.
wants to start a restaurant called Himalayan Cafe.
Oh yeah, you told me that. I love that. Well, I
Um,
will be there buying whatever she has to sell. That's for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, they're doing great. They're doing amazing, and children continue to come in our way, and we've got our work cut out for us. Still, we've got a
Mhm.
lot to do.
Right.
But seeing that full transformation, it's amazing. It makes you believe in something. It makes you believe that it's possible. When a child's
Yeah.
given a happy childhood, it turns into a happy, productive life with less violence and the perpetuation of these cycles in the world.
Mhm. Well, that's I mean, it's beautiful and powerful. I think in so many ways with children, as you say, you have 6 new kids, you're always beginning again. But now that you've been doing this long enough to see where that leads, I mean, you always knew it was going to, but it's really a powerful testament to the work that you and Tope and so many others have done with so much love.
Yeah.
One of the
Thank
questions that
you.
came up in my book club, and it's a question I found myself, answering a lot, actually, when I tell my friends about you or talk
Mhm.
about you, which I do all the time because I'm so proud to be your friend, is this idea of what a mother is. One of the things that you provide for the children, you and Tope, and again, all the people who work with you, is that you play those maternal and paternal roles with the kids. And I've heard people say, like, how can Maggie be the mother to, this number of kids? Would you talk to us a bit about the role you play, the way, what does motherhood mean to you in this context?
Hmm. Well, I think I didn't set out to be a mother and be like, "I'm your mom now." That was never part of the journey. It was never what I thought was gonna happen. In fact, I thought I was gonna go back and go to college, and then, you know, bedtime stories and tuck-ins and the cutting of fingernails and bath time and getting the shoes on for school and making dinners and being around the table. It's something that happened to us as a family, and it was the
Mhm.
greatest gift of my life. I wasn't alone at all. It was a communal. We have aunties, we have uncles. In Nepali culture, you're Kanchi mommy and Tuli mommy and Miley mommy and Tulubua. It's like everybody's
You have a
family.
lot of
Ema
moms.
calls me Didi, big sister. But the kids conscientiously called a meeting and decided, hey, you're our mom. And that was, you
You
know,
are commissioned to be their mom.
it definitely is a role that it's true, and it's a gift, and I love it more than anything in this world. I actually think, love only grows, it only expands.
Mhm.
And I love the way that we raise our children in commune, in the chaos of a house with puppies. And we set it out to be like this loving, joyful music playing, kites in the sky, marbles in the side yard, skateboards, the whole thing. And it is.
Dancing to Beyonce on the rooftop. I can attest that this stuff happens. I've been there. I've danced to quite a lot of Beyonce on the
On the
rooftop.
roof.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's home. It's like it's home and it's family in every sense of the world. It's what every child needs. It's what every child deserves. And actually, I think right now at this time and place in our world, we're being called to expand our definition of our human family and who and what we care about. I think we need to, like, it's so scary right now. There's so much threat and fear and just unknown. The world is such an uncertain place. And I think when that happens, you just want to close off and draw a
Mhm.
little circle around who you love and who you care about. And I think we need to do the opposite. We have to learn to step up and work together and move together and just do what we can to keep believing that this is possible.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you wrote about that so movingly in the book, I think, but then I also you've lived that. And I think that that's the reason that there are all these questions about, like, how is she a mother? But what about this? But what about that? In so many ways, it speaks to this, like, I think that the very, very narrow trap we've sort of put mothers into, that,
Yeah.
like, being a family looks one way, being a parent looks one way. And the fact is, it can look so many ways. One of the things I was taken aback by this at first when I arrived in Surcat. I've been there twice, as you know, that all the kids so quickly treated me like a mother figure, and like they called me auntie. And I was like, who's auntie? Oh, that's me. And there was a kind of assumption that I would be somebody who would guide them and nurture them and in some ways love them. And I thought that was such a powerful thing. And I think, wow, that kind of like, what if we expanded that idea of if we walked through the world with that idea of ourselves,
Yeah.
that we were
Right.
everyone's auntie or uncle or those people who are older than us are that to us. I think that
Yeah.
that's it's such a great example of the way that love can transform the world.
And these are our children. Like when your child and when our children as a collective are not loved and valued, there's real human consequence to that. And so by saying these are ours, the collective us, this sense of human family, it's taking more responsibility. And that's one of the things I love about the culture, that everyone is everyone's Dee and auntie. and then you step into that role because you're called to do it. And I think we're being called to do that as a humanity right now too, if we can figure out how to coexist here. But Tope and I just set out to change the model for what orphan care could look like, for what vulnerable children go through. It's a place that you'd want to send your kids to. It's a
Right.
place you'd want Bobby and Carver raised. It's a place you'd want them to go to school and feel proud of. And yeah.
And they've been there at the home and the school, and honestly, we had to pry them out of there. If you guys, the only thing they were missing was like pizza and macaroni and cheese and stuff. Though
I actually think Bobby said, if anything ever happens to you, can I go live with Maggie?
Yes, that's true. No, I love it. You're doing something right as a mom if your kids are putting in requests for like who you'll leave them to if you die young. So, but yes, you are the choice, Maggie and Jeremy. So tell us a bit, and I want to say to those of you listening and joining us out there in YouTube land and Literati land, if you have a question for Maggie, put it in the comments below, and some magic person named Kat will put it in the little chat for me. But I have a question that comes from members of my book club who posted it on our little app where we talk about it. And it was about the process of writing the book. A lot of people obviously are curious about, how does one write a memoir? Of course, we could talk about that for like a year, but how did you write this memoir? What was your, what first brought you to it? Why did you decide now was the time to write this book? And how did you write it? A lot of people mentioned they noticed that you mentioned that you had some assistance from, I'm forgetting her name.
Shannon.
And tell us about that collaboration, your process, and how this book came to be.
Yeah, well, it was incredibly challenging to write. I think I texted you.
I'm so surprised, Maggie. I thought writing was easy.
It was so hard. I wanted to throw up. I hated it. I wanted to quit 1,000 times. I remember sitting with you and just being like, I can't do this. I couldn't speak. There's a lot of shame. There was a lot of loss. There's a lot of failure. There's anger. In this book, there's my greatest fear. There's so much. And I remember talking to you really candidly about that. You're one of, I chose early on, I realized early on that there were a lot of things I couldn't talk about, and I just didn't feel that I could share. And I didn't want part of the story to be my story. And you were a big piece of that, just really realizing that writing is a tool for healing, and for sharing, and for letting go and releasing and moving through, not getting over, but moving through certain things. There's something that happens when, you're able to talk about your trauma and your loss. For me, my children are turning 19 and 20 and 21 and 22. They're getting jobs, they're growing up, and they're my age when this story began. And I felt like there was a lot unsaid. There was a lot that they didn't know. And I just had this vision of handing it over to them, and like being able to give it to them and let them hold it in their hands and read it. And they have now. And that was really powerful. And then I also, another reason.
They love it. I mean, there is a real sense of, obviously, it's very much your story, and nobody can tell anyone else's story, but it is also your family's story in a lot of ways, the Coppola Valley family story.
Yeah, yeah, and this story had been covered in the press, like, it was on CNN or in the New York Times, and in a way, I always felt like it was very scratch the surface, and we
Mm,
almost didn't even get a book deal because they were like, "We already know this story, girl with a backpack goes to Nepal, raises kids,
right.
we get it."
And
And
you're like,
then
"That's not it."
yeah, I was like, that's exactly why this story has to be told. There's so much beneath the surface and so many
Right.
layers and so many questions and complexities. And I felt like it was just time to do that. And I'm so lucky. I'm so lucky for Shannon. I'm so lucky for you and the writers of the writers of the world that I could get this piece of my heart. And it has been very healing, and it's such a gift. And all those hard, gritty, impossible days where you want to quit and give up, eventually this happens and you're like holding it in your hands. And it's been incredible. Giving it to the kids was everything. I like had bit all my nails off. I was so nervous. It was so hard. And then I handed it to the kids and they read it. And I was just like, okay, I'm done. I'm good.
Did you write it, so would you write a chapter, send it to Shannon, she would give you feedback, you write I mean, is it like or
Yeah.
was it a slow process, or did you just go and then
So interestingly enough, I had journals and
Mhm.
writing in this messy closet of a Google Drive. It was just like piles and piles and piles and piles of writing. I've kept journals just
Right?
like forever. Every story from the time I was young. It was just not ever intending it to be anything. Like
Mhm.
I had written love letters to all of my children. I had read, when I fell in love with Jeremy, I just kept journals just because that's what I did. And so a lot of it, what I learned was building the architecture. And Shannon saw that in like 2 seconds.
Right.
Like, oh yeah, this is no, cut,
Cut,
shave.
cut,
So
cut.
yeah, and I think that takes I'm not a writer by trade. I love books. I've been a reader since I was a kid. I read and I read and I read, but I did need a lot of help with my craft. And with it's like building a house. You can't go into and write a book without architecture or plans and drawings.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm grateful for her. She's become like one of my closest friends, and we joked at the end that we were going to get matching tattoos. And was yeah, she really helped me, especially
Oh,
with
that's so
Literati
sweet.
chapters. And yeah, it was really hard. Mhm.
So, I know that, um, we're coming to the end of our time here, so I'm just like, "Okay, what are the best last questions I wanna ask?" So you, let's bring it to now, like, what's happening now? This is the question people always ask after they read your book and become, like, so immersed and connect in your life and connected to you. As
Mm.
this book ends, I believe, Ruby's been born, your bio daughter, Ruby, but now you have also another child.
I had a second child biologically, a little boy. His name's Everest.
Yes,
And
appropriately.
he will not have a book or a chapter about him because he will be
He's gonna be
undocumented.
really sad about that. You're gonna pay for that someday, Maggie. You're gonna have to write another book now called Everest. Um,
Like you, I have a documentary filmmaker husband, and we've been working on just capturing the stories and the beauty of Nepal on the ground. So we've been working on that. We are all headed to Nepal in like a week, and our daughter's starting kindergarten, and we're all going to be reunited. Um,
she's starting kindergarten at
that
the
Copula.
beautiful at the
Yeah.
yeah, the Coppola Valley School, which is I visited it right as you were finishing construction on this magnificent it's more than just a building. It really is this property that has
Beautiful.
so many cool things, beautiful things about it. So this is where Ruby gets to go to kindergarten, huh?
Yeah, it's the greenest school in the whole world. Not because
Literally, yes.
yeah, it is. It's actually like completely self-sustaining. The kids grow food. There's animals. It's rainwater harvest, solar. Yeah, it's outdoors. It's going to be amazing. So we're headed there. I'm so excited. And the journey continues. The journey continues. Yeah.
So you will continue doing your work with Blink now. What about another book? Is that have you now that you've had this experience and I know you were just in the Netherlands, you've even been around the world a bit with this book. Have you thought about the ways that writing, what's the place of writing in your life going forward?
I like writing just to write. Um, so without the intention of it becoming anything, I enjoy that process. So I'll keep at that. And yeah, no big plans. I just want to like get through till tomorrow.
Yeah. With one baby and one kid in kindergarten and a very big community of children in
Yeah.
Surkhet, Nepal. I guess
No
you
big
can.
plans.
Well, we will wait. I will wait patiently for that next book. I have a feeling, Maggie, that someday there's another book in you. But
I'm
of
waiting
course,
for
you never
yours.
know.
We need more of yours. So for those of you who don't know, I've been reading Cheryl since before I knew she was Cheryl. Yeah. Sugar
Oh,
Days.
thank you.
Yeah.
That's how we met. We met through our work.
Mhm.
We were both giving a talk at a place where I had been invited because of my writing, and Maggie had been invited because of her beautiful work with the kids in Nepal. So
And I'd
our
been living
work
in
brought us
Nepal with
together.
like no one except for like your columns and your writing.
That's right. I wasn't just a writer you liked. I was the only writer you read. You're just But anyway, Maggie, I just want to say
Thank
thank
you.
you from the bottom of my heart. Your book
Love you.
is
Thank you.
beautiful. There we are. I'm going to send you one of these that has this sticker that has my name on it, which makes me very happy.
Thank you.
Look, my name's on the back too. So like I'm a bonus.
Thank you. Thank you.
I have really just loved sharing this book with so many people in my own community in Portland and in my online book club with Literati. And thank you so much for taking this time to talk to us. I'm wishing you all the best, safe journey back to Surkhet. And I hope that things go swimmingly with Ruby starting kindergarten. And please send my love to Taupe and your whole community there.
Thanks, Cheryl.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for listening. You can join my club. Go check me out at literati.com. I think /Cheryl is where you find me.